Hello, and welcome to Intelligent Automation in Financial Services. Banks and insurance companies, both designated essential industries, are faced with a flood of issues in response to COVID, such as government regulation and legislation, workforce social distancing, and unprecedented transaction surges around loan programs, repayments, and risk assessment. Those further along in their digital journey are finding that they're more able to proactively meet the demands than those who had put off projects for technologies like RPA, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. But regardless of where you find yourself today, intelligent automation provides solutions. Our experts today will discuss the impacts of the pandemic on banks and insurance companies, how RPA is triaging urgent pains, and how financial institutions can leverage automation to move forward past our global crisis. Our panel consists of James Denning, Automation Evangelist, Ken Mertzel, FSI Industry Lead, Danielle White, VP of Global Customer Engagement, Sean Campion, NVP of RPA Delivery, and I'm Kimmy Amphenauer, Director of Alliances at Collaborative Solutions. I'll be your host today. Let's take a minute to meet each of our guests, hear a little bit about our two host companies, and then we'll jump right into the discussion. If you have questions along the way, just enter them into the question box, and depending on time, we'll either answer them during the session or we'll reach back out to you with answers. James, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Kimmy. My name's James Denning. I work for Automation Anywhere as our Chief Evangelist in Europe. I joined the company 4 years ago. I was the first person in Europe. So I've set up the whole operation. So I've worked in sales, I've worked in marketing, partner management, services support, pretty much everything. So it's given me quite an interesting perspective on the RPA and intelligent automation industry.
Thank you. Ken?
Thanks, Kimmy. I'm Ken Mertzel. I'm the Global Industry Leader for Financial Services at Automation Anywhere. And prior to joining the company about 1.5 years ago, I've spent my entire career in financial services. I spent the past 15 years at Bank of America and in a variety of roles in consumer operations, risk, and finance, including helping them implement the first proof of concept of RPA in finance at the bank. So I can relate to the journey that many of you are going through. Prior to that, I was at Accenture in their financial services strategy practice. And my role at Automation Anywhere is to help develop use cases and thought leadership for the industry.
Fantastic. Sean?
Thanks, Kimmy. I'm Sean Campion. I work for Collaborative Solutions. I have been in the Workday ecosystem and space for the past 10 years, delivering HR and financial solutions to a variety of customers, both nationally and globally. And prior to that, I used to build out what are now called RPA solutions, but this was way before the term was popular. A lot of automated solutions for the telecommunications industry to automate their call centers and other types of processing pieces out there. And I'm really excited to see us pair up with Automation Anywhere and where that industry has gone to today in terms of its capabilities and what we can bring to our Workday HR and financial customers with marrying both systems together. Thank you.
All right. And Danielle?
Hi, Danielle White. I'm the VP of Global Customer Engagement. I've been with Collaborative Solutions for almost 8 years now, across a variety of roles in delivery, and most recently leading our strategy and transformation practice, where we focused on how to help customers journey through their digital transformation efforts. So really excited about this partnership and what it brings to bear on our relationship with our customers going forward.
Fantastic. Danielle, can you introduce Collaborative Solutions for us?
Absolutely. Collaborative Solutions is a finance, HR, and student cloud transformation consultancy. Our legacy is really one of being based on being the longest tenured Workday partner. And you can see that with our over 800 Workday customers. And we're very proud of our strong 98% customer satisfaction rate. You know, our expertise is really shown across the fact that we have over 100 product leads. And we have a global experience, you know, with our locations both in North America, EMEA, as well as Asia Pacific. We have all-encompassing strategy and change management services, as well as post-go-live production support services, which we're very excited about. And as we know, Happy customers are a result of happy employees. So we're most proud of all of the great awards that we've been winning over the last several years as a best place to work in across the board in professional services and consulting services. A little bit about collaborative, right, is that we actually have been focused on HR and finance transformation for quite some time. And we've been focused on the Workday legacy as a part of that, but we knew very early on that our journey included change management, for example. As the ecosystem grew, as what our customers' needs grew, we continued to grow as an organization, expanding globally, expanding our services into post-production services, and expanding into strategy and transformation. So as we continue our journey as a digital transformation consultancy, we're very excited about our partnership with Automation Anywhere. As Automation Anywhere is a strategic partner of Workday, we really felt that this was a strong partnership for us to engage in to really help drive and further the digital transformation of our customers. So excited to see what more we can be talking about the FSI industry today. Next slide. A little bit about our financial services experience. We have a strong legacy of working across the board in financial services, both across banking as well as insurance, as well as finance technology and finance communications. So very excited to see how we can continue to drive these conversations, and with the strong experience that Automation Anywhere has in FSI, I think this is a great partnership and looking forward to this conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Danielle. James, would you like to say a few things about Automation Anywhere?
Sure. So Automation Anywhere, we've been going for some 16 years, and about 6 years ago, we switched off everything else we did just to focus on enterprise RPA. And it's been fairly meteoric growth. We think we're the best. We think we're the biggest RPA intelligent automation company in the world. What is absolutely true, we're certainly one of the 2 companies that claim to be the biggest RPA vendor in the world. We're about 2,500 people. We have about 3,500 enterprise customers and a lot of partners, over 1,100 partners of all different shapes and sizes. From major partners like Collaborative Solutions, the big 4, down to small boutique partners, maybe operating in one particular market or one particular geo. We have quite a big hairy, audacious goal, which is to be the world's largest employer at some point by the end of this year, with 3 million digital workers. Now, at the moment, we're heading towards about 1.8, so we think we're on course to do that. And we operate all over the world. We're a global company. We're headquartered in Silicon Valley. We have offices all over Europe, all over the Far East, all over the US, pretty much everywhere where our customers have a need. And these are some of our customers. This is quite a European-centric slide, but we provide software to all different shapes and sizes of customers, from SMEs up to the enterprise. And probably our niche is that we've really focused initially on the enterprise because we want to provide something that scales. And if you're, the NHS, for example, the world's 2nd largest employer of any sort, if you're a major bank, a major employer, whether you're in retail or in big pharma, healthcare, very, very relevant at the moment, manufacturing, we have software that can help you scale automation across the entire enterprise. And Ken, can I hand over to you now to talk a bit more about what we have? Kemi, do you want to put the next slide on?
Sure, happy to do that. And so what I wanted to talk about is actually a little bit about where we see the technology going. You'll notice that we refer to a digital workforce as opposed to RPA specifically, because our belief is there's a variety of capabilities that we see required in the technology to enable companies to truly help provide digital assistance for their employees. And so as part of our platform, by way of example, we certainly have RPA, and I think for those of you that aren't familiar with it, it basically is simply software that will actually perform exactly the same tasks as an employee might perform on an automated basis, basically freeing up individuals to do the more value-added activities. And that RPA technology can either be traditionally unattended, basically kicking off a bot and running in the background, or increasingly we see the technology moving more towards attended automation, where you can actually interact with the bot in real time, again, acting as a virtual assistant, both to provide information in real time, for example, if you're a CSR, as well as to enable real-time collaboration across a team, whether it's with supervisors or underwriters, et cetera. In addition, we see another critical component of the digital workforce platform is being able to access unstructured data. I mean, RPA works best when it's rules-based. You have data structured in databases or spreadsheets. But as we all know, a lot of data actually sitting out there in unstructured forms, sitting in emails and PDF files, et cetera. And so within our platform, we have a product called IQBot to extract that unstructured data, leveraging advanced technologies such as computer vision or machine learning. So it's much more advanced than traditional OCR to extract that data and then be able to move it into RPA. In addition, we believe it's important as part of the digital workforce to have analytics, so you can analyze results just as an employee would. And so we built into our platform Bot Insight that gives you insights not only on how the bots are performing, but equally importantly about how your business is performing based on all the data flowing through. And then on top of that, we really see the industry evolving to not just simply individual bots, but really we've developed what we call digital workers, so a series of capabilities that we've packaged together to be able to enable supporting either a specific process or a specific role, and also built a lot of these as well as individual bots into our bot store to help jumpstart companies' efforts around executing RPA. The last thing I'll mention before we go to our broader panel discussion is really how financial services companies are viewing RPA and why they're finding it so valuable to their organizations. And typically an organization will initially look at RPA from an operational efficiency standpoint. How can they streamline manual operations or lower costs? But increasingly, companies who use RPA realize that there are significant additional benefits. So for example, the ability to really enhance customer experience by increasing the speed and accuracy of interactions with customers. In addition, RPA is really an opportunity to strengthen governance. A lot of processes are sitting in, old Excel spreadsheets or in macros, and this really provides a lot more visibility to what's being automated. It can provide a better data security, audit trails, etc. And then RPA is increasingly being used as a way to sort of the foundation for innovation, where initially companies might start exploring RPA and then over time add additional capabilities such as the ones I've mentioned built into our platform. And lastly, maybe counterintuitive, but companies have really found it a way to empower their employees. Again, historically, people thought maybe RPA was a replacement for employees, but we see more commonly that really these do act as assistance to employees. So again, take the more manual, repetitive tasks and enabling them to focus much more on value-added activities.
Fantastic. Thank you. That gives us a great idea and kind of level sets on what both companies do. So let's go into some specifics about RPA, and I'd like to kind of take a before, during, and after look. We can't ignore the fact that the country's in pandemic right now. So, for reference and just for perspective, can you talk to us a little bit about the role that RPA has been playing successfully in financial services by maybe giving us a few typical use cases?
Sure, absolutely. And let me start with the financial services industry. And again, it's a very broad sector. I'm not going to go through all the items on this slide, but I'd say in terms of where we typically see most common usage in financial services is in three areas. One specifically in loan fulfillment. You can imagine the large number of documents coming through, particularly in the mortgage process or in other loan application processes. So handling those volume of documents and helping employees manage through that process has been very, very valuable. In addition, we're seeing a lot of interest around compliance, and probably not surprising given that financial services companies are typically highly regulated. And so processes around know your customer, KYC, anti-money laundering, AML, and all the needs to extract data from internal systems and also external public websites has been really valuable to customers as well. And then thirdly, in financial services, really just everything around customer service in terms of some of the routine tasks in terms of opening accounts, closing accounts, basic address verification or general customer inquiries. But increasingly, as I mentioned earlier, the ability to use attended automation to provide true real-time support to customer service reps, enabling them to have all the information about a customer in one place in terms of their products, transaction history, as well as being able to provide real-time guidance to customers in terms of what products or services they might need. With that, let me talk a little bit about similarly where we see usage in insurance nowadays. And again, it's pretty much across the board in the value chain, but if I had to pick 3 areas, I'd say first and foremost, we see usage in claims management. Again, a lot of intake of the data associated with the claim, getting that claim file set up, triaging the claims. And then in addition, customer service, just as I mentioned before, for the same reason, handling routine requests, but again, leveraging attended automation to help the CSRs. And then the third place I would say is around an emerging area, really an opportunity around underwriting. Again, it's not so much replacing underwriters, but really enabling them to gather all the data necessary to do a better job around assessing risk, getting data from internal and external sources so that they are able to focus their expertise around risk assessment as opposed to data gathering. And then, it's certainly used across all of the horizontal corporate functions. You mentioned earlier, finance, HR, IT. So we're seeing a lot of the usage across all those areas, particularly finance, where it tends to often be the organization bringing us into companies focused around, a whole variety of areas, AP, AR, et cetera.
Great, thank you for that. So, with that in mind, that gives us definitely some insight as to the role that automation has played to accomplish a lot of the kind of business as usual issues. What about now that that we're in pandemic? How are banks and insurance companies leveraging RPA in the short term to address challenges like rapid rollout of loan forbearance programs, premium deferrals, surges in refinancing application, claim call volumes? What are we seeing there?
Yeah, I'll mention a couple examples we're seeing in financial services and insurance. And again, I think one of the benefits of RPA is the fact that you can get up and running in terms of develop an automation of a certain process in a matter of weeks as opposed to months or years with traditional automation. And that's really been valuable in the current environment where, again, companies were having to react extremely quickly to economic circumstances, to new government programs, et cetera, and being able to stand up some of these things in a matter of days. So I'd say in the financial services space, a couple quick examples. One would be many banks and financial services companies are setting up loan forbearance or payment deferral programs, and we're seeing either attended automation being able to help CSRs field those requests from customers quickly, or some banks where they've actually proactively implemented forbearance programs across their entire loan base. And in one example I can think of where a bank basically rescheduled 6 million loans, set up the bot in a matter of days, and were able to reschedule all those loans in a couple more days, whereas it would have taken them, they thought probably months or if not years to do all that work. We're also seeing similar usage around given the low interest rates, in terms of helping manage the flood of like mortgage refinancing requests. And then also there are a variety of government loan programs across the globe that require banks to, handle a significant increase in loan volume associated with those and managing that. And so we've helped a lot of companies stand up programs associated with that quickly. In the insurance space, I'd say, again, I mentioned claims, so handling the increase of claims volume, whether that's related to business interruption, travel insurance, or life insurance. You had mentioned around companies proactively issuing premium waivers or discounts or referrals or deferrals for example, in auto insurance. And then lastly, I see opportunities going forward around pandemic risk assessment to look at both what your exposures are today, but also what new products you might want to set up in the future. And in general, I think as we get out of this pandemic, all companies really can be looking at how can they really accelerate their digital transformation efforts. So I think there'll be a lot more interest in leveraging this technology in the future.
Agreed. James, can you give us some examples of how some European financial service organizations are using automation to kind of pivot quick and address urgent changes like maybe work allowances?
So I think, in Europe, it's pretty much the same things that are being done. But I'll give you one example, maybe not from the perspective of a big financial institution, but I'll give you an example from the perspective of companies that had to deal with those financial institutions, or in this case, to deal with federal bank and federal government. There's a scheme that the German government has set up for short-time work and short-time work allowances in Germany. It's the KUG. I'm afraid it's the Kurzarbeit KUG scheme. I can't pronounce the German very well, but it's essentially if an employer has implemented short-time work, that employer can apply to the government to get some of that funding, to get funding for some of those wages from the government. And one of the things that we've actually built a robot, we built a digital worker to let those employers request that information. There's a certain amount of form filling in. It's not desperately complex, but there's a fair amount of work to do. There's forms you need to fill in with employer information. There's some calculations you need to do. And in the first 2.5 to 3 weeks, over 650,000 companies applied to do this, have requested that short-time working. So, and the government expects that in total, over 12 million workers will be on this scheme, and that compares with only 1.5 million in the financial crisis some 11 or 12 years ago. So this is a perfect example where you can spin up a digital worker to handle an awful lot of work in a very short period of time. And take the burden of that work away from people and leave them to do things that only people can do, which is come up with ideas, strategies to help deal with this pandemic. So it's a perfect use case, helping businesses apply for that KUG funding.
Yeah, that's perfect. Digital workers really helping us to pivot quickly and things that we never expected that we were going to have to do. Danielle, I know that you're the classic optimist, and you always like to talk about recovery and beyond. How can banks and insurers leverage automation in their plans for successful operations post-crisis?
I think there's several things to be really considering. One is helping to improve governance structures, right? So thinking about, what is your governance structure for, your processes, how do people interact with their digital bots, right? How do people make decisions, right? So we know that a lot of this is driving to those value added activities that Ken was mentioning earlier. And that's really a result of having data to drive decision making. So I think establishing a strong governance system up front is one thing that, a lot of industries, but especially, the financial services and insurance industry with having such a strong audit background, right, are really going to be looking for. I also think, the strength of being able to reach out to various stakeholders. Again, Ken was talking a bit about customer service reps, so we know it's stakeholders externally as well as stakeholders internally that we're focusing on, right? So how can we really help improve our relationships across our stakeholder, organizations and groups? But all of this is really going to have, I think, an exciting opportunity for us to look at job redesign. As we think about, what's really going to happen in HR, we're thinking about, as we move those repetitive, task-heavy activities off of, human workers and onto the digital workers, how do we redesign our jobs to really take advantage of the digital workers and enable our employees to have those value-added strategic relationships going forward. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the industry and HR as a whole starts doing to really focus on the job redesign coming out of it. And then finally, I think it's about adoption, right? We know we're only as successful with our digital transformation as we are with people adopting all the tools and technologies and processes to support that digital transformation. So making sure that we focus on getting the adoption in place to really drive those changes, I think is going to be critical as we move forward.
Great points. Yeah. Sean, to you, I know you're involved in the deployment of HR and financial systems for, global companies across the spectrum. What are some of the areas that you see automation enhancing and being able to complement traditional ERP systems?
Thanks, Kimmy. Gosh, a huge number of opportunities that are out there. It's a very broad question. We're talking about enhancing your HR and financial systems. I see two broad categories out there. One is we've seen a lot of organizations today going through that transformation, going from some of these on-premise legacy systems onto cloud-based systems. And there's a support that can be provided during the implementation itself. And I'll give some examples right there, including when you're looking at longer term transformations, as we're just talking about in terms of multi-year approaches to digitizing your workforce, digitizing your environment within your organization to get you there. And the next, there's not a lot of opportunities once you're up and running with a lot of these systems, whether they're legacy systems or current, the new ones out there, with enhancing your service delivery capabilities on HR and financial services, across different types of industries. So for instance, if you're going through an actual implementation right now, let's say you're upgrading your legacy environments to a more modern, cloud-based system such as a Workday environment, there's a lot of work that needs to be done by your team, typically your HR financials team, that are also still doing their day job in addition to trying to support this implementation that is going on there. And it's a very demanding and stressful time during this period for your team, and that can really stress the resources. In particular, when we're looking at, for one particular example, is if you're looking at right before you're ready to go live with your new systems, typically you take a cut of data several weeks before your go live as your final cut of data that goes into, for instance, your HR system. That is then going to be built and then rolled out. There's going to be a gap, a period of time between once you take that last data cut and when you actually turn on the system, that can be sometimes several weeks in duration, that today requires you as a customer to go and either dual entry a lot of that data or do some bulk uploads to try to get that data back in sync. And this is a great opportunity to use a digital workforce that can come in, and this might be a little bit more of a temporary type of nature, but take that load off. Oftentimes you see HR organizations or even financial organizations, but mostly the HR, during this period make an ask of the business to reduce transactions, delay promotions, delay transfers, delay merits, because of the large amount of work that's required to keep these systems in sync. So it's business impacting. Switching to a digital workforce is going to allow you to not only accurately and timely keep those systems in sync, but you're going to remove that impact from the business. You're not going to have to go out to the business and tell the business they can't do what they want to be doing out there. And if you're looking at often in very large organizations on multi-year transformation, so often you have an end goal in mind of a digital workforce on modern SaaS digital systems, and where organizations are today to where they're going may take multiple years to get to it as they modernize different aspects of the enterprise in turn. And while the end goal is going to be great, sometimes getting there can be tough as you're running legacy systems and modern systems in parallel side by side. And again, you're going to have a requirement often to keep these systems in synchronized, having to do dual entry, validating the data across the systems to make sure that everything is synchronized across the environments, legacy and new ones. So again, if you're looking at a digital workforce, to be able to handle that load, it's going to improve your accuracy across the board. It's going to improve your timeliness across the board. You're not going to have to worry about people making errors, about going on time off or vacation or anything like that. It's going to keep things in sync, and it's going to allow you to get there. Once you're there, once you're actually running and operating, and whether it's on the legacy environment that you have today or the future platform that you're going out there, there's still a lot of opportunities out there in service delivery for automation. So you're talking about your HR financial service delivery going out there and supporting your internal customers and ensuring that there's a timely response. So we talked about several examples already about automating processes and automating forms. And there's a lot of value added that these individuals in HR and financials can provide to your organization, but they're often spending that time doing low value add items such as rekeying in forms or rekeying in data that is coming in from the organization. Digital workers is going to allow you to streamline that process, take away a lot of those manual entries, and have your team focus on serving the customer. A really great example is, on the financial side of the house, is invoicing. So if you look at overall the state of RPA today to where it was even about 4 or 5 years ago, one of the key things I think that Cam and James both mentioned is the challenge of unstructured data. And for the longest time, RPA systems really focused on that structured data, highly repetitive process, which meant what you could automate was fairly narrow in scope. Today, you can go much further upstream and downstream in those process flows, for instance, capturing those documents at the front end. So you can have your digital worker capturing those invoices coming into your email. Actually read the document, interpret the intent of the document, enter that information, then, or take the information, enter it into your system, and actually kick off your process flow. Those are all highly manual tasks that had to be done prior and still need to be done. They're not going to be taken off the plate of your internal team and focus on that. So overall, the number of use cases and possibilities out there is vast. And as you start investing into that digital workforce and digitizing your environment, the use cases are going to continue to present themselves out there.
Absolutely. And that whole issue that you just brought up about the dark data, the semi-structured and the unstructured data, most organizations, that's about 80% of what they're working with. So, it's a great point that you make there about, the automation anywhere being able to handle both sets of those, both structured and unstructured. Danielle, talk to us a little bit about challenges. So what do you see as the biggest challenges for companies as they roll out bots and digital workers?
I think it's a two-headed coin, really, is what we see. Is we see the, one where people are going to be very excited about everything that could potentially be done, right? With how Automation Anywhere can help them, streamline things. And it's really getting a focus or a roadmap of really how to optimize what you're doing, doing it in a thoughtful manner so that, you're building on lessons learned, that you're, getting low-hanging fruit, et cetera, and really, embracing the journey rather than trying to do everything all at once. On the other hand, we know that, in our, conversations and research on generational differences, right, not all workers are going to be comfortable with the thought of having a digital worker that they're partnering with, right? We know people are going to have different expectations of what the robots are doing for them, right? There's, people who are excited to get those, repetitive tasks off their plates, but there's going to be a lot of people who wonder, what does it mean to them, right? The what's in it for me or with them is going to be really huge here. So I think making sure that we can identify, kind of going back to those job design, right, what those changes are at the individual level for the people who are going to be directly impacted by the adoption, right, of RPA, but also, how do we control the excitement around it to make a really thoughtful, planful approach for how to optimize what we're doing through the use of automation.
And Danielle, if I can add to that, I mean, another challenge we commonly seen is that organizations, as you said, they get real excited about it. They build, 10, 20 bots, and then they kind of stall out and they don't achieve the kind of scalability we've seen with a lot of our customers who ultimately have, hundreds, if not thousands of bots across the entire organization. And I think there are a couple of factors driving that. One is certainly you want to engage a variety of businesses across the organization and truly engage the folks really involved in the operations who truly understand what the processes are today and what some of the bottlenecks are. Secondly is you clearly need a tool that enables scalability. So something that is, for example, just like ours, is very easy to use, but equally importantly has that centralized control room. So as you go from tens of bots to hundreds or thousands, you have visibility and controls over what goes into production. And then in addition, I think people, underappreciate the amount of change management's involved. I think typically in a manual process, everyone's used to change management and having business continuity and backup processes, but often there's a misperception that, oh, well, if I've automated via bot, I don't have to think about that. Well, it's really no different. And so making sure that you have a small centralized center of excellence with people skilled in program and change management. So when processes or data, does change, you're able to quickly on the fly, update the bots and work with the organization, I think is absolutely critical. And so that's why we've seen a lot of, our customers' success who have those factors I just described, able to scale, well beyond sort of the initial, 10 or 20 bots.
Absolutely.
James, tell us about some of the lessons learned that you have seen from successful automations that you've been a part of? Things like, what's some advice? Should companies start with artificial intelligence right away? How do we go from start to movement here?
It's a great question, and whenever anyone asks me this, I always think I could talk for like hours on the subject. I'll try and kind of keep it fairly succinct, but the place I'd start is start with low-hanging fruit. Don't run before you can walk. If you have fairly simple, easy to automate processes and tasks in your business that will bring a decent return on investment, then start there. Start with the easy stuff. I think if I said to any CFO, listen, there are two projects. One you can do in 3 weeks and it'll save you 100 grand a year. One will take you 3 months and a load of complexity and stuff, and that'll save you the same amount of money. Which one do? You do the easy one. So I think start with the low-hanging fruit, then go on. I mean, nowadays people are moving on to almost that second phase, the artificial intelligence, machine learning phase, which is the higher hanging fruit. People are moving on to that quite quickly now. And if you're not starting to if you're not looking at RPA at all, you really should be. If you're not looking at AI automation projects at some point this year, you're behind the curve. The second thing is take advantage of work that people have already done. There are things like BotStore now where you can go and buy automations or buy automations to base your automations on rather than build them from scratch. There's an old IT axiom, better to buy rather than build. No one builds software from the ground up. You build it, you base it on libraries of code that people have already written. And there ain't nothing new under the sun. If you're doing accounts payable or accounts receivable using one of the 2 or 3 big ERP packages and Microsoft Office to shuffle data around, someone else will have exactly the same problem. And someone will have already fixed that problem. They will have built a digital worker to do that. Why not go and reuse that IP rather than spend the time and effort in building stuff up from scratch? There's lots of other bits. I think the third bit I'd say is keep your momentum up. We see many very promising automation journeys get derailed because people starting that automation journey, they don't get the right senior sponsorship, they don't evangelize the results of that automation well enough, and there are a million distractions we all have in work every day. There are a million new bits of technology or new projects for us to look at. So make sure you see early success, make sure you show people that success, make sure you keep that automation journey going, make sure you get bigger and bigger. In general, if you have a few automations, you'll not be seeing the same return on investment as a company that has lots of automations. And for us, lots means, certainly hundreds, maybe thousands. So it's all our big customers, the Citibanks, the AT&Ts, the BPs, the AstraZenecas of the world. That's where their journeys are or where their journeys are going. So keep momentum up, make sure you're going for scale, start off simply, make sure you engage the right people and try and reuse IP wherever you can.
Great advice. Just one thing I'd love for you to elaborate on a little bit, because I think, when Collaborative was looking at Automation Anywhere, it's one of the things that we loved is, the analytic component that is built into Automation Anywhere really helps, pull projects. You have a small project that you started with, it did great. All you have to do is go run a report and show it to management and say, look at all the money that you saved, look at the time, look at the hours. Our people are doing other things now. Could you talk just a minute about that?
So yeah, real-time analytics. I think we have a part of our product. Real-time analytics is extremely easy to set up to start getting data, actionable data out of your automation farm, out of the automation platform. And I think there are two things. I think the first one is the state of health of your automations, and showing the value that they're bringing to the business, I think is incredibly important. Being able to actually surface that value, show what's the end of that value proposition, because CFOs, CEOs, COOs, they like to see the value that's being brought. They don't want to take it on, on anecdotal evidence. There's one of my favorite proverbs or axioms, whatever you want to call it, I used to have written on my office door, and it was, "In God we trust, all others bring data." So being able to show that data in a very concrete fashion is very important. But the second part of that, which is to surface actionable data out of that lifeblood of your company, the data that your robots are manipulating, is incredibly important. If you have an employee who's manipulating data and they're doing things with data, and every now and again they put their hand up and say, "Hey, I've just seen something, I've seen a pattern, I've had a realization, I can see some added value we can get from that data," that would be a great thing. And you can get your digital workers to do that for you. And I'll give you an example. Supposing you're processing loan applications, for mortgages, and you have digital workers processing those applications, and hopefully they're doing, KYC checks faster. They're enabling your business to reply to those customer requests quicker. All good stuff, more accurate. Yeah, this is all great. But as well, supposing they can surface data saying, hey, we're seeing a trend in people moving from this low average net worth postcode or zip code to a high average worth network, postcode or zip code. That's interesting business intelligence. Maybe you can contact those people and offer them a second product. So there is value added that you can to your business that you can get by extracting it real time from that data, because the world works in real time these days. I used to work for Amazon. Amazon runs the world in a 50-minute cadence. If you're selling on Amazon's platform every 50 minutes, they're price matching against you. It's a great business. The world doesn't work on a weekly or monthly cadence anymore. It works in real time, and you need to be analyzing your data, like I say, that flows through your company. You need to be analyzing it in real time and taking advantage of it in every way that you can.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for answering that. One last question for you, James. So, I think the whole, unprecedented is definitely the word of the year for 2020. And everyone has been blindsided by, the changes that had to be made basically overnight. A lot of those changes have been really hard and hit companies really hard. Some of them, though, I think we can find a silver lining to those. Using tools like automation especially can help us through these areas. And some of the stuff that we figure out and how to use automation may actually stick. Are there a few examples that you can think of, things that could stick through this process?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we sat down and thought, when the pandemic hit globally, what are some of the things we can do as a responsible technology vendor? And there are various things we're doing, providing free software to either companies or to federal agencies to help with that response. And some of those, may stick, which would be good. Some of them, won't. Some of them are temporary things, and that's fine. One of the great things about digital workforce is you can spin it up and spin it back down. It's never a good thing to hire a lot of people and fire them. If they're digital workers, you know what, that's fine. We don't care so much.
Their feelings don't get.
For me, one of the big things that I hope will stick will be businesses becoming more resilient. Could COVID-19 happen again? Yeah, it could. It's a novel virus. The whole point is it's new. This is why there are problems in why we don't have existing vaccines or transferable vaccines. So I think automation being used to make businesses more resilient, having more of a mix of digital workers as well as real human workers. We've always talked about taking the robot out of the human. Taking those repetitive rules-based tasks that actually humans aren't that good at doing, because we don't do 100% accuracy. Getting those tasks that are more suited to be done by computers, by robots, by digital workers, and freeing up humans to do the things that humans are so much better at doing, being creative, coming up with strategies, dealing with outliers. The companies that are succeeding more in the face of the pandemic are the companies with more automation, because their humans can deal with the outlier of the pandemic. How do we pivot our business? What's the stuff we never saw coming, and how do we deal with it? And they're leaving their day-to-day operations to be done by digital workers. So if there's one thing I'd love to see stick, it's all businesses, federal agencies, governments, everyone having more automation in place that brings more resilience for other black swans, like another pandemic or something else that comes possibly in the future.
Great answer. All right. So we're just going to we have a couple minutes to take some questions from the audience. So let's see. I have one here that says, is there a limit to the number of bots that I can run over my finance functions?
Let me take that. No,
yeah.
There's no hard limit. You can have lots. I mean, it's really down to you to look at your finance function and say, what are the places where we have rules-driven processes? I talked about accounts payable and accounts receivable all the way through procurement. You've got order to cash, the whole cash management piece. If you think about supplier management, just things like we need new suppliers, we're going to do an RFQ process. Actually, a lot of the RFQ process is very rules driven. You know, if you have procurement specialists, you don't want them handling the nuts and bolts of sending out RFQ or RFP questionnaires and making sure they're collected back in and making sure they've been, the answers are well formed and chasing people up. What you want is them reading the submissions, going, okay, I get that, and negotiating. Yeah, that's the human bit. So I would say all the way through your finance function, there are things you can automate. Anywhere where you have a set of rules, try and automate that piece and try and leave people to come up with those far more subjective decisions, because the vast majority of things in finance actually are not subjective decisions. You have a set of rules and those rules are in there for good reason. Have the humans building those rules, amending those rules, changing the processes, doing a very small number of subjective opinions, have computers doing the rest of it with 100% accuracy 24 hours a day.
Yeah, and I agree with what James said. I mean, typically we do see in accounts payable, accounts receivable, but increasingly we're seeing it used across the finance organization. And just, a couple of additional examples. So in, for example, the financial close and reporting process, helping to automate manual reconciliations, manual journal entries. In treasury operations, we're seeing increasing usage around, bank statement consolidation, reconciliation, and cash forecasting. Even areas like tax, and it's not so much doing the complex tax accounting, but again, the aggregation of the data for tax provisioning has been an increased usage. And then I think in finance, it goes well beyond the, just automate manual repetitive processes and drive more efficiency. I mean, in finance, I work with organizations say, hey, efficiency is a bonus, but what we're really focused on is strengthening controls, and in particular, eliminating manual controls. And so by, again, automating through something where, again, you have that control room, audit trails, et cetera, that you might have been managing through Excel spreadsheets or hard-coded macros, provides a finance organization a lot of additional benefit from a control and governance standpoint, well and above and beyond that, efficiency and cost standpoint.
Makes sense. How clean do a company's processes need to be to start automation? Do you have to go in and scrub everything before you start, or advice?
Yeah, maybe.
The risk of wanting to, sorry, Ken.
Go ahead.
All right. At the risk of wanting to dive in first, I have a slightly controversial view on this. That I hear a lot of people say, there's no, you shouldn't automate a bad process. But traditionally, when people say a process is bad, there are kind of two ways that a process can be bad. The first way is it's actually broken. Whatever the business outcome of that process, say it's a payroll process, people don't get paid. And that's very unusual because those processes get fixed very quickly. Those problems, those mistakes, those breaks in the process get fixed very quickly. Trust me, if you don't pay your staff at the end of the month, that process will get fixed. So 99% of the time when people say a process is broken, it means that process is inefficient. Yeah, it doesn't work particularly well. You could make it a lot more streamlined. But you know what? If you're replacing, let's say, half a dozen expensive FTEs with a few $1,000s worth of computer time, do you care? Do you care if that process is a bit clunky and a bit inefficient, if now you're just throwing cheap digital worker time, cheap CPU time at it? So it's a bit more, I think it's a bit more of a nuanced answer than just say you shouldn't automate a bad process. You know what? If I can reduce the total cost of operating that process down to a fraction of what it was before, then I don't care what happens under the hood. I'll fix that process actually when there's a good reason, business reason to fix it. But right now, I'm going to take advantage of that cheap digital worker to operate that process 24 hours a day and spend my time and effort fixing something that actually needs fixing, not something where I've taken 90% of the cost out of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think traditionally everyone's been sort of trained that, well, you have to re-engineer the processes first. And I think the reason for that is it makes sense. With traditional automation, typically you would take months, if not years, and hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions. And so, yeah, you better make sure the process is perfect. But as James said, given that this technology enables you to do it at very low cost and very quickly, as long as James said, mentioned the outcome will be appropriate if the process is very inefficient. The bot doesn't matter if there are 3 steps or 20 steps. So I think it's really kind of turned the dynamic on its head, just given the easy and quick to implement nature of this versus traditional automation.
We have a similar paradigm here that our dishwasher in the house didn't work very well. And we thought, do we spend the money on buying a new dishwasher or do we just bribe our children to wash the dishes every night? And that turned out to be a cheaper way to go. So it's a similar kind of metaphor.
They have nothing else to do right now, right?
Exactly. They can't go out. So keep them busy.
Yeah, that's a good answer. So the other question is, I guess with a lot of solutions in the marketplace, what differentiates Automation Anywhere? What makes you the one that a company should go with? Or if you already have automation in-house, how does that play with what Automation Anywhere is doing in your scope?
For me, it comes down really to one, maybe two things. Automation Anywhere has always been slightly obsessive about what customers want, and in this case, what customers really want is scale. If you've got two automations, and you're saving 100,000, you're a big multinational, and you're saving $100,000 a year. Quite frankly, no one cares. If you're a major company, you want to be taking advantage of automation across the enterprise. So building out scale, having the platform scales, having the pieces around the platform, whether it's AI to address that, those high hanging fruit, or bot store to let you buy rather than build, or discovery bot to let you almost automatically build robots, is incredibly important. If you're an SME, being able to scale and build robots quickly and easily, again, a platform that's designed to let you do that without having to go and hire a lot of software engineers to deal with a very technically complex platform, is incredibly important. So I'd say you're buying not only that ability to scale whatever size of organization you are now, but you're also buying the future. We put artificial intelligence into the platform very early on because we recognized it would be a core part of the platform. Things like bot store, things like the ability to record what you're doing, things like discovery bot. I don't know what we'll have I have a bit of an idea what we'll have in a year or two, but I don't know what we'll have in 3 or 4 years. But what I say to our customers, and the reason our customers succeed, is we will hold your hands every step of the way. We will look after you as a great vendor, and you're buying not just a great platform that lets you scale now, you're buying that innovation, that thought leadership, you're buying the future of automation technology. Even if you're using another platform, great, I hope you succeed. Come and have a chat with us as well.
Great. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. How do we manage staff sensitivities around the threats of bots taking our jobs?
I think that's actually a great question, Kimmy, and one that, like I said, I've heard a lot of people wondering about, right? The fear of, robots taking over the world, right? Is kind of embedded in people's minds, and they think of robots as what we see when we see, I think assembly lines, right? And really replacing people. I think finding a way to explain and, really drive that it is an enabler of your existing job, right? It's there designed to support you to do other things. Its goal is to free up the time and mental capacity, for you to do all the things that you wish you had time and mental capacity to do. So finding the way to, explain the what's in it for me in such a way, and designing the job in such a way that people understand the value it's going to provide to their own unique instance, is one that really goes a long way to help assuage the fears that people have about bots taking over their jobs. And I think there's a point of critical mass that once you get enough people who might have been resistant to this because they were afraid of bots taking over the job, eventually they'll become evangelists for what bots were able to do to support them in the new world order, right? And once you get those internal evangelists, change champions, however we want to think of them, lined up and really participating, they can help spread the message and help calm the fears of others in the organization who have the same fear about bots and the effect on their jobs.
Yeah, it really was,
significant. I think it would be addictive to start thinking about what parts of your jobs a bot could do, and you'd probably feel very relieved to start unloading some of these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was definitely a significant concern at the bank I worked at, and I think you have to acknowledge certainly there is a efficiency aspect to it. But as Danielle said, I mean, there are a lot of people who, once they got involved, were like, man, I don't want to be doing all this data aggregation, creating reports. I'd rather do analysis, what I was paid to do, and so they were excited about that. In addition, I think it's sort of the analogy to back when like the computer came out. People thought, oh, well, it's going to replace and eliminate all the jobs, and now look, all of us pretty much use computers today. So I think it just enables a lot of additional capabilities. And that's why, again, we tend to view it more as a assistant as opposed to a replacement. But absolutely there is an efficiency component to it as well.
And also, this is, you know, nothing new. Technology for the last 170 years has been used to make people more efficient in the jobs that they do. You know, I live in farming country, and you go and talk to farmers and they say, oh yeah, you know, 30 years ago we had 25 people working this farm, now we have 3, because you have things like the cotton drill, you have the combine harvester. If you work in a factory, you know, it's you know, the spinning jenny. If you work in an office, yeah, the spreadsheet was one of the things where people said, well, hang on, we're going to put 90% of people in this building out of business. But as Ken says, those technologies haven't reduced jobs. What we've seen is we've seen task replacement. We've seen technologies replacing particular tasks and making people more efficient at doing those tasks. But it hasn't led to a whole series of job losses, and it won't. I think if you're very transparent with the people in your business and explain it's not about a whole bunch of, you know, Terminator robots coming out of the field, general purpose robots replacing people, it's about using automation to automate certain tasks. And exactly as Ken says, most of those tasks are ones that people will quite happily give up, you know, so they can spend their time doing the analysis, doing the intellectual value add, which is actually the interesting part of their job, rather than spending 20 hours a day, you know, 20 hours a week filling in spreadsheets.
Good points. So we're going to wrap on that. If we did not get to your question, or if you had a question and you didn't get to put it in, please send it to digitaltransformation@collaborativesolutions.com, and we will definitely get back to you. We'll get it answered. We really appreciate all of our guests today staying with us and talking, you know, listening to our conversation about automation. We look forward to working with you on an automation project in the future. Thank you very much from Collaborative Solutions and Automation Anywhere.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Thanks, everybody.